Okay, we're recording now, and it's March 31st, 2016, and I have the great pleasure of speaking to Kriss Hall. Kriss Hall, I got a chance to meet you actually in Burns for a brief second. I know you're a very, very busy woman. So what actually brought you to Burns? Because when I was there, I heard a gentleman read a letter that he wrote to you, and you were actually very busy and weren't even going to be able to make it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was contacted by a family in Burns who was concerned about what was going on, and they had been following my posts on Facebook and listening to my radio show, and they wanted me to come in and teach a class there in Harney County on the constitutionality of the Bureau of Land Management, the proper role of the federal government in land ownership management. And I initially told them there was no way I was going to be able to make it there. I usually book a minimum of 6 months in advance, and my calendar is already booking a year in advance. And so it just so happens that at that time a group had to cancel a 3-day event based on some internal logistics, and I had this time open. So I contacted them and I said, "Look, it must be God driving this. I have 3 unexpected days open. Can you put something together that quickly? And I will buy the plane tickets and I will be there." And because I knew this was really important, these people were being thrust into a lot of confusion by their local county judge, by their local sheriff, by the presence of the FBI. And so we decided that it could be done one way or another, and they got the Harney County Memorial Building at the Harney County Fairgrounds, and we did 2 days of classes, and it was amazing because in that short period of time, we packed out that building. We taught nearly 600 people over those 2 days, which is an amazing thing when you consider that Harney County only has a population of 7,000 people. So we nearly taught 10% of the entire county in those 2 days on the proper role of the federal government in land ownership and land management, and then the proper role of the states and the local sheriff to defend the rights and the liberties and the properties of the people.
Yeah, it was very amazing. I was there on the first day. I wasn't able to make it the second day. We actually had to get back to our farm, and that's actually what I wanted to get into real quick. Is when I was there, I turned around because I sat in the very front row, and I learned so much when you were speaking. And I turned around at one point, and it's like I saw an awakening happen right in front of my face while you were speaking, because it was so simple.
It is.
That was the biggest thing, and I know you were saying too that we all need to get back to ABC 1, 2, 3, because this is about our generation, and I get a lot of people that say, well, why do you care? Well, I mean, we have to care, and with the Constitution of the United States, I'm going to go ahead and ask probably the hardest question, and everyone's wanted me to ask you this question. I learned a lot there, and I learned a lot with the Constitution. But something that is becoming frustrating to me, as well as other people that are involved with the political prisoners right now, is I know we need to educate the Constitution, but how are we supposed to educate it and then also try to have a constitutional case in a court system where they actually say that we don't want to hear about the Constitution of the United States? Do you think that the Constitution of the United States is already gone?
No, it's a matter of a real authority and assumed authority. And the real authority still exists within the Constitution. The problem is that the American people have become universally ignorant to the Constitution. We've allowed government to raise our generations for decades, and now we have decades of people who believe that the Constitution is irrelevant and that it needs to be modernized. And believe that the courts are the ultimate authority on the Constitution and our liberties. And because we have so many that believe this, that's how the government is allowed to operate. But if when we are able to actually educate the people on the proper role and function of the Constitution and the proper role and function of the government, they have that awakening that you said you had. I mean, it was just one class, and you had your awakening, and that's what we're seeing across the country. And what we need to, and it is frustrating, it's extremely frustrating, because we're not going to see, we're not likely to see any real victories in the courtrooms. Not likely. Because the issue here is that the courts are always a mechanism of government that becomes corrupted, almost always first, through centuries of history of government. It's part of a history class that I teach called The Genealogy of the Constitution, the 700 years that led up to the Constitution itself. And so throughout those years, our framers, through their history and their own experience, learned that the court systems were one of the first to become corrupted. Most people don't realize that our liberty movement in the American colonies didn't begin in 1773 with the Boston Tea Party. It began in 1761 with a court case. With a court case where the courts were corrupted, they had no chance of actually winning, and they actually did not win at all. But it was the awakening that happened when the people saw, finally in front of their own eyes, that these mechanisms that they were hanging all their hope upon were so far gone and corrupted that there was no hope within the mechanisms, and that the only hope was within the people themselves defending their liberty and demanding that those they've elected defend their liberty as well. And that's the conclusion that we have to come to here in America. We've got to come to the understanding that, look, we're hanging our hope on politicians, we're hanging our hope on political mechanisms, on the courts, we're hanging our hope on presidential elections. All of those things are false hopes. They are siren songs to keep us pacified and complacent and compliant in the cogs of the system. The real solution has been the only solution forever, and that has been the diligence and the vigilance of the people to defend their liberty and demand that those we have elected do that. That is what our framers expected us to do. But they also were aware of human nature and knew that it would be quite possible that we'd end up in this day, which is why they created a constitutional republic and not a kingdom. So we don't have to chop off heads. We have states and local governments and sheriffs that can stand up in between us and the federal government and defend our rights peacefully.
Now, do you also feel that, I know you've seen the articles, we've all seen them. Do you also feel that this could have actually really been because of the resources that has to do with Russia and China?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of those things played a part in that, but the real problem here is the fact that we can't control the federal government. You see, it comes back to the constitutionality of what the federal government is doing. The federal government has no constitutional authority to promise off to other countries our natural resources, which if you back up a space, they're doing that because we're in such debt to these foreign countries. Well, our federal government doesn't have the constitutional authority to throw us into this level of debt. So then you back that up a few spaces. Why are we in this level of debt? We are in this level of debt because the federal government is doing things, providing services, and engaging in activities that they are not constitutionally authorized to do. So they are collecting money from the people to pay for things they're not supposed to be doing, driving up the debt, and putting them in a situation where they have to secretly parcel off the resources of the United States to pay these debts to keep us from going into war with countries that we are in debt with, that we shouldn't even be in debt with, because we shouldn't have programs like the Department of Energy and the EPA, or the Department of Education or the FDA. We shouldn't have national forests and the Federal Forestry Service. We shouldn't have the Department of Transportation. We shouldn't have any of these things, period. And yet we're paying for them, and that's the whole source of the problem. If we go back to our original understanding, if we go back to a federal budget that only includes those things that they are constitutionally entitled to spend on, my goodness, America would have such a prosperity, we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that, 100%. That's what's been frustrating me is when I left Burns and all that happened. It's really hard to even just on the way back go into gas stations and you just see people just carrying on with their lives, and like you said, everyone's so ignorant that it just feels like that no one's waking up until it actually starts affecting them individually, and it's really sad to see that because of what we're leaving our next generation.
Right, and that's when you said in the beginning, people said, "Why do you care?" And you said, "You have to care. You have to care because it's about future generations. You have to care because it's about our children and our grandchildren. It's about the future of America and the future of our own liberty. Because if we don't care, then we become just like China. We become just like all the socialist countries and communist countries on the planet, and we don't want to be that."
Yeah, and I just sometimes feel like this new world order is winning. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like it's too late, and I don't want to say that because this is what I believe in so much that, I'll take this to my grave, this Constitution. It's what we were founded on, and it's just sad to see it just slowly getting ripped up in front of other people's faces, and they just sit back and say, who cares?
Yeah, well, I guess maybe a little bit of encouragement for you. We're not as far gone as we were when we, first fought for liberty in the American colonies. I mean, after all, at that point in time, we started off as a kingdom, so we already started off much lower than we are right now. And history proves that people always stand for liberty. It's just like Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence. Men will suffer evil while evil is sufferable. But after a long train of abuses, when we realize that, there is no other hope than standing for liberty, that's when the people will stand. Right now, we're at a point where we have too much stuff. We're addicted to too many things that are just not important, and we have too much faith and hope in things that simply offer no faith and hope. And the good news is we're not hopeless. We're not too far gone. The bad news is it's going to get worse before people actually wake up and realize that there is something to be done.
Yeah, there is
something to be done, so we will do it. And the awakening is happening. I mean, we have amazing things. We're seeing states and governors and sheriffs standing up all over the country. It always happens. One by one by one, until then there's many, and then there's many more, and many, many more. So it's never, I think we have a false idea of how this works. It's, somebody holds up a pitchfork and says, freedom, let's storm the Bastille, and then hundreds of thousands of people go and fight for liberty. That's just not how it works. It's the small brush fires that ignite the hearts of others until we have enough to do something.
Yeah, you're right. There is an awakening. It's some people have said that it needs to speed up a little bit. It's actually a guy named Ken Rhodes. He said something the other day when I interviewed him. He's friends with Pete Santilli, but he had said this year is going to be there's going to have an awakening, and other people are going to have a rude awakening.
Yeah, no, that's always the way it works. And we just remember back even when we were fighting for our independence in the 1770s, it was not a unanimous endeavor either. We had people still wanting to be loyal to the king, still happy being in subjection and submission because they liked being